I remember having this like underlying fear, and I was like, I've got to like be on top of everything because I may not be able to do this. Like, I remember this really negative thought pattern of just like, you're not cut out for this. Like, how did you even get here? That doubt started to really creep up.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could have just a little dose of encouragement whenever you're feeling down? Or maybe a way to see your problems from a new perspective. Get a boost from Buddhability whenever you need it with our new app. Read the idea of the day, test out chanting, or ask Buddhability something that's been on your mind. Available now for Android and iOS. Hi, Cassidy from Buddhability here. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to subscribe. It'll help the show out, and you'll never miss an episode. If you want more Buddhability content, you can subscribe to our email newsletter in the link below. We put out great content every week. Enjoy the show. Thank you for joining me today, Laila-Rose. I'm very excited to hear your experience. It's going to be really focused in this like transition time of college into everything that happens afterward. Yeah. Big transition. So I'm sure this will be relatable for many people that listen. But before I, give everything away, I'm just going to have you introduce yourself so you can just share a little bit about who you are.
Thank you so much, Cassidy. So excited to be here. Nerves are like tingling under the skin, but I, just really, really excited to share. Again, my name is Laila-Rose. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, and currently live in Brentwood, Mount Rainier, Maryland. So if you go into the dictionary and like look up local girl, like I'm gonna be the face of that. I have been in this area for my entire life. So shout out DC, Maryland, Virginia. And I, currently live with my partner, our 3 cats, our dog, a few fish. So running a little farm here. Love it.
That.
And a tarantula. How could I forget? That's like the craziest one. But
yeah, how could you forget that one? That's a big one.
I know. She lives her wonderful life. But yeah, I'm currently working in the local restaurant association for restaurants here in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and really just have a great time enjoying this city and spending time with my family that all live here too.
I know that your mom was the first person like in your environment to start practicing Buddhism. So can you tell me how you then started your own practice?
Yeah, it was really great kind of how growing up. I remember going to meetings and hosting meetings at our house. And so when I started at university and college, I was on campus, and my mom was always encouraging me. She was like, there is a club on the campus, like find them, go to their meetings and stuff like that. Freshman year was really difficult for me. And I think, a lot of people can potentially relate to going from being like a senior, everybody in school, you're in the sports and the clubs, and, then to really starting over. So freshman year was hard. So I came back sophomore year, and I was like, look, if you're gonna want to really enjoy and succeed, like you have to go out. And I started visiting and trying out a bunch of different clubs. And of course, like the Buddhist club was on my list. And so I attended a meeting on the campus, and then that really just like from there skyrocketed my own practice, and started going to the center and studying with people at my school, and really digging into it in a way that I just had never had when I was growing up. My mom didn't like force me to chant. She really wanted me to like come into my own things with it. And so, I was engaging in a way that I just had never had before.
Were there any things that like you were chanting about early on or studying? Like, I'm trying to think about how to frame this question, but like growing up around Buddhism, I personally was like, yeah, I know what Buddhism is. And then I started actually studying it and realized like, oh, actually I didn't know that much about it. So like as you were studying more and getting more involved, were there any things in particular that you were like, oh wow, like I didn't know this about Buddhism, or I didn't realize I could use it to transform this thing in my life?
Yeah, I remember having a funny experience of feeling like I was like, I wow, like I do know these concepts because my mom like upheld them in our lives, but like didn't
Oh
call them
yeah.
Buddhist concepts. So
Yes.
it was like, so it was this really interesting experience of it's like I'm like really familiar with this, and one of the ones that kind of like come to mind is I would say the law of cause and
Yeah.
effect, and just understanding that you make these causes, right? And you make them joyfully. You make them without like potentially expecting anything in return, but you know that the effect will generate a positive effect, right? Because you've made this positive cause. So stuff like that, I felt like I was really engaging with. And I think as a freshman, then now a sophomore, you experiencing really your own autonomy, right? Like that of you have every choice of like what you're gonna eat, and are you gonna go to the gym, how are you gonna take care of yourself. Okay, you have exams, you have classes, you have homework, like no one's gonna tell you to do this stuff, so you have to do it yourself. And so I think that during that time, engaging in this philosophy that really calls you to action and calls you to, show up for yourself and believe in yourself, really gave me like a foundation that I just didn't have before when again, freshman year, like was not it. So, so I just needed that foundation. I needed something to ground me. And it was really important to build like connections and friendships with people that I never felt like were going to judge me, and I remember that having an insane effect on just, my confidence as I was, really trying to like figure out who I am and what do I want and, what's important to me.
It's really interesting thinking about like, yeah, referring to it as like a philosophy that really calls you to take action. I've never heard it framed that way, but it's like so accurate. Yeah. And something exciting too is like there are many like philosophies, right? But to be able to really put it into practice in your daily life, that is like the challenge. And I think where studying more, but particularly chanting and being with other people, like that can really help you like engrave it more in your life. It's not just something that I like think about wanting to live my life that way. I actually live it that way. So it's definitely, I think for me too, is like a big transition as I started my own practice of like, oh, now I'm like really doing it.
Yeah.
Do you have any like in those next 3 years, any major challenges that you use your practice for, or anything that you felt like it helped you really break through anything?
Yeah, I had an incredible set of roommates. So I was like friends with one, and we were like looking for an apartment together, and then we needed a third, so then I brought in another friend. So we like created this really amazing trio, and we're actually like still the best of friends today. But in those early days, it was a little tensious in the house, and so I remember this having like, a really heavy effect on just my spirit, and feeling like our apartment, what is supposed to be a safe space, was safe, and that everyone was happy and we are all living harmoniously, right? So, that was something that we just really struggled with sometimes, and it's natural. I mean, I think it happens with roommates, whether they're friends or not friends, but having that component of friendship also made it more sensitive. And so, I just remember really chanting for us to be able to like connect, in those moments where I'm struggling with this, and they're struggling with this, and now we're just butting heads because the dishes are not done, right? And whatever it could be. But I really chanted for us to have this really happy and safe home that we could all enjoy. And I just would have these incredible experiences of, an olive branch being extended and really positive conversations and dialogue that we would have. I just remember like literally chanting and then like immediate change of environment, right?
Wow.
Immediately this space feels different. And and like they were so incredible in terms of encouraging me in my practice, and still are. So yeah, that was really amazing to see my environment change when I made that determination and really even have that shift in my own heart. Right?
It's one thing to chant about, like, okay, I want to do my best in school, which is great. And we can all do that. But there's the, like, other side of, like, I want to chant about something that feels a little out of my control, I think there's sometimes, I feel very confident that, like, I'm capable of doing X, Y, or Z. But then to, like, sort of expand that to, like, wow, can I really change my environment? Can I change my relationships? That can sometimes feel like impossible. And so to have that experience, I imagine, was affirming, like, oh yeah, okay, this Buddhism really works. I can really change anything. You then through those 3 years had really started developing your practice and seeing the power. And then you graduated college in 2020. So I wondered if you could tell me about like that time for you. Did you have any uncertainty, and like what did your own entry into post-college world look like?
Yeah. I really felt so protected at that time. I had a incredible opportunity where I was able to sign a full-time job offer in November of 2029 or 2029. Whoa, 2019. Right? So I signed this job offer in 2019. And, at that point, a lot of my peers were also, in this interview process, confirming their full-time jobs for when they were going to graduate and everything. Jump forward just a couple months, and now, we're all kind of like gearing up to head off to spring break. I was like, I'm going to Switzerland, Mom. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. She literally had to hide my passport because I was like so convinced that I was going to like hop on a flight. And then like 2 days later, like all of the borders like shut down. So it was, a wild time. And so I really remember I had so many people in my class that had job offers that were then rescinded. And you had so many people that, now they're no longer interviewing. Can't even begin to imagine all the experiences that people had. I mean, I think everybody remembers where they were right at that time and that moment. But yeah, again, I was not as impacted, but there was still, of course, so much uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen. I had a job with a grocery store, so, that was still a booming business at that time. And so, yeah, I just expressed so much appreciation that I was able to, still graduate, have this job, which, I felt like was a real benefit of my practice. It was one of those jobs where, you're making a whole goo gobs of money, and they, have the car and all of these things that, felt like such a victory. And so, yeah, I was like really, really just deep in appreciation for the practice, but also like the community of people that supported me during all of my college years, and my professors, like so much appreciation just for like still being here.
And so then as you like actually start the job, you've graduated, I'm imagining you're fully remote. Personally, when I graduated from undergrad and I started my first job, I was like, what is this foreign world? I don't understand how any of this works. And so for you, what was that transition like? How was the job?
I actually didn't have a work from home job. So they were like,
Oh, wow.
they were like, girl, go work in the grocery store. So I was like
Wow.
working in a grocery store during COVID. Like that was scary.
That's scary.
In terms of just the level of contact that you're having. And so yeah, you have so many people that are like staying home, but they really made sure that we were, taking all of the safety precautions and doing everything properly. But I remember having this like underlying fear, and I was like, I've got to like be on top of everything because I may not be able to do this. Like, I remember this really negative thought pattern of just like, you're not cut out for this. Like, how did you even get here? That doubt started to really creep up. And so I start in the first couple months are, really just learning everything. But the next couple months just got really difficult. And I think what I share is they were training me to be the type of manager I did not see myself to be or want to be. And that was difficult to work with morally. And then I think I was also just so young. I did not set certain boundaries that I should with my time. And so I was really giving a lot of myself where I was just like too tired to cook, too tired to clean, too tired to like literally do anything on outside of work than like rest so that I could be ready to go back and like do it all again. And so that it's really difficult. It's still difficult to say it now, but needless to say, it was not a good fit. The company knew it, and as much as I probably knew it in my heart, I still wanted to try. I wanted to succeed. I felt like anything else would have been a failure. And now we're in January or February of 2021. I end up losing the job, and, really kind of just getting fired. And there was like no like correct like, okay, 3 months, let's try this out. Like it was like, you're not cut out. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye. That really hit my confidence in a way that I, did not maybe even fully realize at the time. And even though I was heartbroken, I was devastated, and I felt like such a failure, I can't deny that there was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders and that I felt free. And so, yeah, that was a really interesting period to navigate. And it was like not even a full year, between starting and getting this, incredible opportunity to then it all falling through. And so I had to like pack up my apartment and like break my lease early, move home with the parents again. Like there was this, just massive turnaround. That again just really made me feel like I was a failure. And I had to do a lot of work to remind myself that I wasn't, because I didn't give up. I went home. I just reestablished my life and immediately got connected to the community of members that were in my parents' area. Started attending their meetings on Zoom, was at home with my mom. We're chanting together. And I was just like, I'm not going to give up. And I started working another job shortly after, but it was like I was an assistant at a hair salon. So it was very much like kind of part-time to get some money coming in. But I knew it was temporary. I didn't know how temporary it might have been. I started going back to school and taking classes in like cybersecurity. I was like, I don't know. I mean, like, it was still early days and there was still so much uncertainty. And I think that working through this just like feeling of not being good enough or I'm not cut out for these things, I didn't know exactly what it was. So I didn't immediately start interviewing to, get a new job. I really needed to kind of like sit down with myself and be like, okay, what do you want to do? And maybe you don't know the answer right now, but let's try a few things out and see if we can figure it out. And so that's how that year really went. And it something that we learn and really understand through our practice is, you know, these things will happen in your life and there's so much to learn from them, right? And like, then you have this capability, like you're growing and you know, you can make poison into this medicine, right? How am I going to make this into medicine was really how I was feeling. I had this like new lease on life and I was like, what do I want to do with it? And so really just tapping into that mindset and not focusing on all of the ways that I might feel like a failure really just pushed me forward during that time.
Wow. I mean, I feel like for so many people, like with work, and there are many other cases in school, whatever, it can feel like, oh, that's the worst case scenario. The thing that I'm like, you know, betting on is just pulled out right from under me, you know, and not only the job, like you said, you had to, you know, end your lease, you had the company car. What would you credit your ability to like be like, okay, I'm going to keep fighting? Like, where did that come from? Because personally, I would wallow for a very long time, and I would probably require many people to encourage me before I could encourage myself. So, like, how did you pull that out of your life?
Yeah, I completely believe and know that a lot of it did come from the encouragement I received. Having that support system and that community, and this was always something that I've just connected to so deeply, is what fuels you, right? And it's what fueled me. I knew there was more to do and more to learn and more to experience. And I still struggled with the fear to do certain things, you know? I still really struggled with the doubt, you know, like I was taking that cybersecurity class. I didn't know what I was doing, you know, and like not doing it very well.
Yeah.
Right. But I still went to class every week and was like, you know what, I'm determined. I'm going to like finish this class out. And this was a great experience for me to know that it's not something I want to do. Right. And like, it's just shifting perspective. And I think that's really powerful, is being able to put on these like different glasses and really see things from a different perspective. And I think some of us and myself right now and at that time could only do that if I chanted or if I attended a meeting, or, you know, studied from a book or from the Living Buddhism or from the World Tribune. And once I did those things, I was immediately reminded of the potential that I have. And so, yeah, I think that just alone, but community is huge, right? We can't deny that. The people you surround yourself are going to have an incredible and profound effect on you. And it being within the SGI has, I know, provided me with support and growth and wisdom and abilities to navigate situations that are really difficult.
Yeah, because problems never stop. But
oh,
it does get easier to handle them. But I mean, yeah, I'm constantly like texting or calling friends in my Buddhist community like, oh my God, this thing just happened, or I've been really like working toward this and I feel like it's never going to happen. Getting that like refreshing kind of spirit, or reading something, chanting, all of those things are like, yeah, just this nourishment for my life. And I love what you said about those things reminding you of the potential, because it really does feel like, you know, you can be so like clouded, and then all of a sudden the clouds part and you're like, oh yeah, wait a second, I do have this potential. Oh yeah, okay, all right, and let's keep going, let's take action.
Yes.
Let's go.
yeah I will say I might have been a little delusional at that time. Like I can say it now, like I was let go, I was fired, they did not want me to work there. At that time, I could not say that. And it took a really long time for me
Wow.
to admit that it wasn't like I was like, you know what, this isn't right for me anymore. Like that, I really tried to convince myself and maybe others that this was like a
Mm.
mutual breakup, and it really wasn't. And so
Mm.
there was some delusion at that
Yeah.
time in terms of just like being able to understand what happened.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that, sometimes we have to tap into a little bit of some delusion to help us through some things. I
Yes,
don't know if that's
yes,
the best
yes.
encouragement, but that is what I did. I do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes, like our karma or, the tendencies of our life, we can't always just like unpack them, excavate them all at once either. Like you can chip away at it a little bit and then maybe it's kind of hanging out in the background, but you're just going to push forward and then it comes back again and you're like, okay, I'll chip away at you a little bit more till you can get to the place where now you're like, okay, this is hard to say, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
Like to get there takes time, I think, for, so many people. So as you're maybe on a bit of a delusional track,
Yeah.
you're on the track of like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of take one step at a time, tackle anything that's in front of me. I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that, I'm gonna try this. Where did the breakthrough happen where you were finally like, oh, okay, actually maybe this one will stick?
Yeah. Between that February to, I'll say, maybe like May or June, I was just going all out in everything I could, whether it was, activities or the school and classes I started taking or the current job I had. And so I was just doing all of these things and really connecting back to this goal that I was like, I'm gonna find where I'm meant to be. Right. And I had no clue what that was or what it would look like. But I knew that I wanted to have a stable job and one that would allow me to like develop professionally and one that would support me in being able to do things outside of work, right? Like the experience of just being so exhausted that I couldn't even clean my one bedroom, one bath apartment. Like that was never anything I wanted to experience again. So come July, I get a phone call and one of the companies that received my resume gave me a call and was like, hey, we got your resume. We'd love to interview you for this position. No clue what the company is, what they do. I didn't know what an association does. No clue what my job role was, executive assistant. I don't know really what that means. We set up time to have a conversation. I'm like, cool, great. We're just gonna like have a conversation. This is like a pre-interview to the interview. No, it was the interview. So I'm like in this park in Florida because I just started a vacation. I'm like holding up the phone like on Zoom with these professional women that are like in their office and they're, so I immediately was like, oh, okay, like tap in, like, okay. It was a wonderful interview. I can interview. but but yeah, it was not professional. I'm like in a tank top. Like I was just not professional.
Oh my
So
gosh.
through all of that, they extend the job offer. They were still impressed. They still wanted me to work with them. And later to come to find out, I was actually like the only applicant. They hadn't even opened it up for people to apply for. They had my
Wow.
resume and just called me, set it up. And I started that following July. And so 6 months later, after having lost this job that I thought was, all of the bells and whistles I could have wanted, I'm starting at this new company. They're smaller, all woman run. It was just such an incredible space. And then that's where I really started to see and recognize like, I was in this professional corporate space again. So, I remember having these experiences of like making these little mistakes, and I can say they were little mistakes, but at the time I was like, I'm getting fired. Like, they're going to fire me right here, right now. And so that happened so much. And I think for a lot of college grads, like, this is the case, right? There's these metrics of success that we are led to believe or learn, and then we go out into the world and we experience it. And, you know, it's not what you imagined it to be. To then have to completely pivot and refigure out and relearn and make your own measures of success. And so, yeah, once I started there, I was able to really start to express myself as who I was. I was making mistakes, but I was learning, and I was determined every day. I was like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to do better and learn a new task and do better at that. And so it's been 5 years now. I'm still at that same company. I'm still learning every single day. The opportunities for growth and for development within this company have really just showcased to me and allowed me to be like, what do I want to do? What do I want to get better at? And it's really felt like a job so centered around helping people. As an association, our members are, you know, restaurant owners and operators and managers. And coming out of COVID, I started July of 2021. So they're like, everyone's kind of still in recovery again, right? One of my jobs was answering the phone. And I remember, like, many a time someone would call and they would just need to vent. And of course, they're not like mad at me, but they're, you know, just don't know what to do, where to go, what to do. And I was that first line of defense. And so I took so much pride. I still, to this day, I knew I wanted to help people. I know I've always had that service component within me. And then to be, you know, doing it in a space where I get to learn, and I, you know, love all the people that I work with and all of those things, you know, put together. You can have these goals and you can, you know, really chant for the best possible outcome, but you never know what might happen. And so this is like, you know, beyond my wildest dreams, as I am still so young and just learning how to like navigate this world, to be in a place that is, you know, so centered around my growth and my development, in the same ways that like members are for me as well. It is incredible, and I express so much appreciation every single day that I'm able to call that my home outside of home, in a way.
I mean, that's like, what more could you ask for?
Right.
And like, you know, having a place where you really feel like appreciated and treasured and challenged to grow. Recently, a friend of mine was saying, yeah, you know, she was chanting about a housing thing, and she said, I just chanted to have a result that was better than I could ever imagine. And I realized, like, you know, sometimes we so limit what we think is possible, right? Yeah. Like, if we don't know the exact, like, you know, job or title or whatever we want, we can just chant, I just want the, like, best outcome for my life. I want the most fulfilling career. Let's see what happens. Because sometimes, yeah, you could have never like searched this specific job out and known like, oh, this is going to be the perfect place for me. So, yeah, in this early transition period of starting there and being worried about failing or, oh my gosh, am I going to get fired? How did you use your practice to butt up against that and tackle it? You know, were there any particular ways that you were chanting or anything that you read that helped you?
Yeah. So as an executive assistant, my main job was to manage our CEO's calendar. How I could manage someone else's calendar when I didn't even have my own calendar managed was a little like, okay, get your stuff in order, right? So there was that whole transition of like, I'm cosplaying an organized person because I'm not organized at all, and I'm supposed to organize our CEO, president and CEO's calendar. Cute. Okay, fun. Let's do this. So it took a little bit of a minute for me to realize that I really also, there was a lot to learn. And it was also a completely, I've worked in catering and my dad's been a chef, but like the work that we did as an association for restaurants was very new for me too. So there was a lot I had to learn. And I really had an incredible fortune where around December of 2021 is when our centers opened back up again. And so I remember that's when I started supporting behind the scenes of our meetings. And I had no clue that I, could do something like this. But I remember doing that and like really dedicating the time and the causes and everything I was doing there. I was like, I'm determined to bring this to my job. And you have to be so organized when you're supporting those meetings. And so I really took that on as training so that I could do better at my job. And I felt like that in conjunction was going to be really, really powerful for me. I was continuing to study because that always remains to be like a really, really important component. And then I was also sharing the practice a lot too, which really challenges myself. I was like, I'm really going all out. And it helped me know that my efforts were not wasted, right? And that I may still make a mistake. I may have more things that I need to learn. And I'm just going to keep fighting. And allowing that to like really just keep me solid in the foundation of like, just keep one step at a time, but just keep taking your steps. Yeah.
Every area of our life is actually very interconnected, even if it feels so separate, right? Like maybe nobody you work with knows anyone in your family or knows your friends or whatever, but the common denominator is us, right? Like we are in all of these spaces. And so, when we really challenge ourselves in our Buddhist practice in whatever way that looks like for us, then that like challenging attitude, the things that we're learning through our Buddhist practice then immediately reflect in our environment. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, as somebody that is very afraid of failure and I'm a perfectionist and I'm really hard on myself, being able to sort of like practice failing and practice not being my best self with people that I know were gonna like really embrace me anyway, like it has been so like transformational that I feel like I can really show up much more authentically and vulnerably in places because I realize like, okay, if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. I have to just, take action and fix it. Yeah. Like we can fix these things. It's okay. So I think maybe I'll kind of wind down for my last question now, which of course is a piece of advice. So for somebody that is like maybe they're in an uncertain spot, whether that's they don't have a job or they don't know what they're going to do next, what would you say to them?
Yeah. One of the books that I would actually like to share from and really helped me and continue to be like a cornerstone during all of this that I've shared is the infamous Discussions on Youth. Always such a good one. And there's a section or a chapter in here called Bringing Out Your Best. And so, for anyone that's in a situation of uncertainty, I really hope that this can kind of give you some encouragement, in the way that Discussions on Youth is written. Questions are posed, and Daisaku Ikeda, their third Soka Gakkai president, answers these questions. So he says, the important thing is to take that first step. Bravely overcoming one small fear gives you the courage to take on the next one. Make goals, whether they are big or small, and work towards realizing them. You must be serious about and dedicated to your goals. You'll get nowhere if you just take them lightly. An earnest, dedicated spirit shines like a diamond and moves people's hearts. That is because a brilliant flame burns within. If we are sincere, people will understand our intentions and our positive qualities will radiate. It is pointless to be caught up in outward appearances. And so, yeah, I am, first of all, I'm someone who struggles incredibly with goals. I know that like a lot of this call was, encouragement towards like making these goals and, fighting hard towards them. But if anyone's into astrology, I'm very much an Aries. I have 4 placements in Aries.
Oh, wow.
Do with that what you will, but I go head first into things and then I fizzle out, and what happened, don't know. I'm on to the next one already. So with that, it is really hard. This year, one of my goal setting methods was making a bingo card. And so each bingo each box was like a different thing that I wanted to, more or less accomplish this year. And I felt like that was like a fun way of just like thinking about whether they can be, again, super small. One of them is like going to see the sunrise, and some of it is as big as lowering my credit score. So anyway, the wide range. But I think that when we set these goals, especially during times where it can feel so uncertain, right? And not even feel uncertain, there is uncertainty. We do not know what the next 3 months, 6 months, year will look like. Something new is coming up every single day, and that is our world, and it's so overstimulating and difficult to you almost feel guilty for having these moments of enjoyment because you start to think about it and it's like there's so much suffering going on in the world and there's just so much happening. And so, we really have to find ways to not fall into the despair and the hopelessness. And I believe that by, tapping into yourself and what you want and your goals and, the tapping into the action to make them happen is, really what you can do at any moment, whether it's stable, whether it's unstable. You have the capability to change your environment. And there's another really great quote I want to read about hope in particular. There's another great book called Hope is a Decision. And the quote goes on page 5, hope is a decision. It is the most important decision we can make. Hope changes everything, starting with our lives. Hope is the force that enables us to take action to make our dreams come true. It has the power to change winter into summer, barrenness into creativity, agony to joy. As long as we have hope, there is nothing we cannot achieve. And so you'll go through all of the motions, right? And allow the experience to happen and learn from it and enjoy the journey, and think about the happiness that you will have when you're, going through that journey, not just when you get to the end. So many of us are coping and finding different ways to cope with what we're seeing around us, and whether it's on a large scale or in your true like local neighborhood community, we have to be hopeful. We have to talk to people, talk to your neighbors, talk to your family, talk to your friends. Don't suffer alone. You never know what someone else is experiencing too. Like, you guys could literally be experiencing the same thing, or you've gone through something, they've gone through something. Like, you tap into your community of people to help you during this time. I think part of the reason I struggled so much in that early job was I didn't know how to ask for help. And I was so concerned about how I was being perceived, right? And all of those components combined resulted in me just not being able to showcase my best self. So it's hard, and we all will learn it in many different ways. You don't learn it once. Like, you're gonna have many lessons over and over again, and remembering that, like, there's got to be lows to sometimes be highs, but also, like they said, winter will always turn to spring, to summer, back to fall. Like, it will never go backwards. So, this is the cycle of it. And to find joy in that is really hard, but seeking out that joy and, getting it, all of that is going to be so worth it in the end.